Hey everyone, G-Force41 here, and welcome to another PGA Tour 2K23 golf course design tutorial video. This tutorial will be on splines and splining, specifically fairways. However, this is a special unique video because it's also a sneak preview of my work in progress, which is an attempt to bring back to life a partially lost Donald Ross historic course. The course is not lost, it's still in existence. However, a good 4 to 5 holes have been lost due to land sales over the years. The course was once private. It is now a public course that is known by many folks in the New England area as Newton Commonwealth Golf Course. However, in the old days, it was known as Commonwealth Country Club, and it was a private course that hosted many a championship tournament. Due to land sales of financial difficulties over the years, I don't want to get too much into it here. They had to chunk the course down dramatically, and I always wondered what it was like in the old days. There's very little information out there, and I've been conducting a ton of research over the past 2 months, to be honest with you, searching old newspaper clippings, looking at old aerial photos, measuring, putting two and two together, comparing it to the current course to attempt to bring this course back to life as it existed in the 40s and 50s when Babe Ruth played Ty Cobb here in 1941 and Sam Snead teed off in the same year, 1941. It's a course that's underwent a whole bunch of changes over the years. It's too broad of a concept to discuss here. But what I want you to be aware of is you are looking at what I believe was the second hole of the old Commonwealth Country Club, which has been lost to time. It is in the area of what is now the 14th hole, which basically is right next to the clubhouse. It's a very short par 4 right now, wraps around the pond. You can see the pond there. The pond has changed shape over the years. This hole played as a 420-yard par 4. It went up into where the condos are right now. So this is the first look at this hole in about 60 years, folks. Here's what it looked like. Check this out. A long 4 that went up the hill. This course is on a slope. It's on a hill. There's a classic Ross heroic carry over a huge 30-yard bunker. I think it's 35 yards, if memory serves me correctly. Out to a fairway that, it's got to be, I'm assuming has to be pitched because of the elevation changes. I've used a topographical map to measure the elevation changes. 2 huge bunkers up by the green. You can see one is right next to the green and one is about 40, 50 yards in front of the green. Another classic Ross design feature. And you can see the green is kind of plateaued. It's at the highest point on the north side of the course. And what you'll see here, if you're familiar with the course, and again, folks, anybody new to this who's watching just for the historics, this is a rough draft. This is a work in progress. It is nowhere close to a final product. So it's just I'm roughing in the course and the features of it. But right there, you see that little kind of split fairway. That's where 18 is right now. That has been there over the years. That little kind of patch right there. I'll put a graphic up. And then there's the current 18th fairway. That was the 13th hole, which played at, if memory serves me correctly, about 500 something yards. And the green, instead of where the 18th green is right now, where the clubhouse was, I'll put another graphic where the clubhouse is now, went back into through the parking lot where the housing is. And as you can see, another super cool feature here, I'm going to move back for you, of this course is, sorry for the circle, you can see that hole off in the distance. This course went all the way down to Chandler Pond. So anybody familiar with the area, the pond, it's all housing surrounding that now. It's dense housing. I was floored when I took a look at the overhead and I saw that this course went down to Chandler Pond. So you can see I put a few touches in there, just some buildings for the sake of just the design and perspective. And you can see up there on the hill, that's the clubhouse. So the clubhouse was up on top of the hill. The first tee was the hole that everybody knows as the downhill. It used to be the 18th hole in the 90s and early 2000s. It now plays as the 13th hole. So, you know, that's the one where it says don't tee off with the driver because there's a parking lot now where those other greens are, and people would bombs away into the parking lot and hit the cars. It's got water in the front now. There was no water back in the day. So this is kind of what it looks like. So this is a kind of cool hole I wanted to show you the basics of splining on. Gives people a little bit of perspective of what I'm doing and trying to do right now. Really neat project. More on that later. But again, that's you can see in the distance there the familiar what's it, the ninth hole now. That played as, let me get my routing down. That played as 5, I believe. The routing is very interesting coming up with it. And the first hole, you see the current first fairway there, I believe that played as 6. So it went 5, down the hill 6. So it basically went 1, like I told you, the big downhill 2. The area of the 15th hole, there was one big long hole. It played into what now is the 16th green as a par 5. Then you flipped over past the current 17 and the current second hole to go over to what is 8 as 4. And then that's why 9 plays as 5, I believe. Okay, but let's get back to the topic of the day, splining, okay? So anybody who is here for the historic content, no need to stick around for the splining tutorial. Anybody who's a designer in PGA Tour 2K23 wants to talk about splining, please stay with me, okay? This is just a roughed-in fairway. First things first, I tend not to lay down the fairway until I've measured. So step number 1 in building a fairway, measure. Use the measuring tool, okay? Let me, now this is just a, I'm in the tee box ready to tee off here. We'll play the hole later at the end of the video to see exactly what it looks like when you play it. But I thought this was a really cool visual. As you can see, the bunkers are presented. You can see the green from here. There shouldn't be any trees up there. Really cool hole. But let's get right back to the designer and the splining. Okay, now I'm in the designer. You can see I've got my waypoint way up here, about 300 yards. The first thing you should do is always measure. Okay, what I like to do is I measure about 15 to 20 yards in each direction. Okay, that gives me perspective. I do the same thing with the green. With the green, I measure out 15 yards in each direction to give me a 30-yard green. That doesn't mean your green's going to be 30 yards. It just means, on average, an average size green is about 30 yards or so. It just gives you some perspective as you go out and in, right? I've fallen trapped to making a fairway that I thought was a decent size, and it turns out it's absolutely huge because I was zoomed out so far. I didn't realize what I was doing. So always measure to give you the perspective, right? So it's about 10 here. Excuse me. About 20 there, right? So that's about 30 yards. This fairway I know is, well, what I believe is about 30 to 40 yards. It pinches a little here after the bunker. It's not huge, but it's not small either, okay? So that's why this is sort of in context, right? If you know you're going to pinch something, measure it. What do you want to pinch it to? You want to pinch it to 25, from 40, etc. Okay, and what you can do is create a series of these, kind of like this, to give you a brief outline. And I'll show you another technique in a moment. But I kind of do it this way, right? Where you kind of say it's about 20, 30 yards. You can keep going. I won't bore you to tears on this video. But then you want to narrow it, right? And so now you go down to 26, or maybe 22, 23, right? And then you can see the point. You can kind of use that as your guide to lay down your initial splines. Or what some people do, they just like to draw it in. If you're artistic like Matt F27, he just draws it in and he's magic. He does it really, really fast. What you can see down here, this is really wide. Do I want it to be 55 yards? I might. I have to look back at my my overheads and my measurements. It is pretty wide about there. But you can just do something like this. And draw it. Now, I'm not very good at it, so I tend not to do it that way. But some people are really good at it. And then you just trace along your drawing when you're laying down your spline. So if you like to do that, that's great, okay? Go right ahead. I'm just going to get rid of all these. Okay, got rid of all those. Um, and then once you've laid it down, now for sake of time, I'm not going to lay down this fairway again. I'm not going to delete what I have and lay it down. We're just going to pretend like I did all that. So I'm going to get rid of these. Let's say I trace them around. Okay, and I'm going to get rid of the measurements. There is a clear all, just so you know, that will literally clear everything. Okay, and then what you need to do is, look, folks, if you want this to look good, you've got to get down low and go through every one of these points. And I know you're saying, oh my God, that's a lot of them. It actually doesn't take that long. To me, planting is intimidating. You can plant forever. This is finite. I know this is a long fairway. It's going to take 5 or 10 minutes. Big deal. I know it's going to be over in 5 or 10 minutes. Put on a podcast, some music, put on the ball game, something. Put on golf on another, screen somewhere, and get to it. You need to go one by one, and you need to use the lines that they provide you to guide you. I like the new Spline editor. It People don't like the clicks, move point, okay, but it brings that yellow up and it really shows you what it's going to do before you do it, so you can kind of play with it. Does that look good? Does that look good? But you've got to go around at least once, and I got to tell you, sometimes I go around twice to even it out and make it really look good. You've got to think about the curves and the contours, and you've got to get those splines spaced evenly. What's the right amount? I don't know. It depends on what you're doing, but I do know it looks awful if they're too bunched, and it looks doubly awful if they're too far apart and you're trying to make a curve. So you've got to use this to make sure you're getting that smooth curve that you want, and the yellow lines help you do that. So really pay attention and go one to one. Now you got a squiggle. That's too close. Stretch it out. Okay, and eventually you might have to delete one when you get up there. Stretch it out. We want this to curve in a little. We're going to start going in. Okay, see how it's nice and smooth now? And it's stretched out a little? You don't need a ton of them. Get rid of them. That one's getting too close, so I'm going to delete that one. Okay, and you can, trial and error here. You can do 5 or 10 and then delete one or keep going, but you really want to ensure that smooth curve. And what I do is every 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, go to edit, smooth and sharpen. So now you just take a quick look at what you're doing. The reason I do that is you don't want to go all the way down 10 or 20 splines and realize it looks like crap, and then you got to go back and redo everything. You're probably gonna have to redo most of it anyway, but you don't want to redo it 3 or 4 times. Okay, so keep an eye on your trajectory, so to speak, here, right? And really get down and get moving with them. To be honest with you, I start at the beginning. I'm not going to do this whole fairway on the video because I will lose viewers and bore you to tears. But I tend to start at the beginning of the fairway. Pick a side. It's going to depend on what type of fairway you're doing, what's more complicated, and go around. Okay, and then finish up, go around your fairway, come back and finish here. All right, but you got to do it one by one. But you see how when I lay it down real quick, these are not spaced evenly? That's what you want to avoid. You want to get this going nice and even and get the spacing to what's going to work. Can I tell you an exact number? No. It depends on what you're doing. But every few yards, you can see those are a few yards apart, okay? And what you'll notice is if you're going for that smooth curve is you're going to do that and it's going to look fairly even. Okay, but you got to get down and get moving. So you can get a smooth curve going one by one by one. Okay? And then keep going. All right, I'm going to pause the video here and keep going. And we're going to come back when I've went around the whole thing. Again, it doesn't make sense to go through the whole thing for you, but you're going to see what a difference it makes from the beginning. All right? Okay. Talk to you in a few minutes. Okay, so I've given it my first pass, touched it up a few times. You can see that's much smoother and much more contoured than it was originally. The kind of inconsistencies and bumps are gone. If you look at it from the top down, I'm going to move over here. From the side perspective, as I've been viewing it on my overhead aerials, you can't see it, but that looks pretty good, actually. That's fairly consistent with what I see in the shady, grainy overheads that I have to work with. That's not bad. So, you know, that took about 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops, okay? So again, the lesson is get down there, go spline for spline, point for point, spread them out and curve them nicely. Get the curve in the shape that you want. If I have time, you don't have to do, you know, it depends on, there are different types of fairways with different types of shape. These are pretty smooth curves. They curve around the bunkers. Sometimes you see very kind of squarish shapes. I've done a course like that. Cuyahoga was like that initially. It's not as square as it once was in the new version, but I can show you how to do that if I have time at the end as well. You know, make sure you're going around your bunkers and the contours are fitting the shape of where you want your bunkers. If you put your fairways in first before the bunkers, make sure the bunkers fit into those little notches where they're supposed to, okay? And shape them in there. Here, just because of what I was doing, I put everything in first, the bunkers, the greens, because I needed the positioning to be accurate, okay? And then I built the fairway around it. I usually don't do it that way. I usually do it the opposite. I find the green location, the tee, and then kind of design the hole accordingly, and usually kind of lay the fairway down, put some bunkers where I think they should be without sculpting them, and then kind of go back from there. But here I put everything in, threw a fairway in just for practice sake, so to speak, and then went in. Now the thing to be careful of here is the green and the entrance to the green, and I'm not talking about the slope. I had two videos on green entrances. You can see I've listened to my own advice. I've smoothed the entrance to the green, and what you have to be careful of is how the fairway interacts with the green. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Okay, calling a quick audible here. Since I didn't show you how to lay down the spline specifically when I'm doing hole 2, I'll get back to hole 2 in a moment. I'm going to lay down the fairway on hole 12 using the technique I just showed you, just in case we have some absolute beginners here. So I did just what I said. I measured out the fairway about 20 yards, I'm sorry, about 30 yards or so wide. This fairway is actually hole 12. It's what people know now as the 17th hole, with the little pond, very pretty short 4 with the pond in front and a stream around it. I don't think there's the water over on the side that's there now, but we'll figure that out later. It pinches a little here, kind of midway through, about 160, 70 yards. And then it kind of curves around and opens up and curves around this way. It did that a little bit in the old days too. I got to get more specific, but this is just a rough draft, like I said. So I've got my spline down. I've measured out the tip all the way back to where the fairway starts, measured from the tee boxes. This one comes up pretty quick. I got to get the slope a little bit better on the sculpting. But basically, that's what I do. And so it's kind of mapped out that way. And just in case you're an incredibly new beginner, create surfaces, fairway, fairway spline, okay? And then just go around and follow this outline. You got to get it kind of a little bit before it. That's fine. I'll fix that later. And trace it around carefully, spacing it out fairly evenly. Like I said, you gotta play around with the spacing. Some people do this very fast. I'm one of them, and then I go around and I fix it later. But for sake of the video, I'm trying to be a little bit more careful. It doesn't have to be exact because you're going to sharpen and smooth it. Okay. You can go around really fast if you want, or you can be meticulous with this. But the faster you go, I feel the worse your spacing is. Okay. Again, you're not trying to be perfect here. You're just trying to follow the basic outline, and then you can tweak it spline by spline. And I know that's tedious, and we're talking about that on the rest of the video, but that's what you got to roll with, folks, if you want it to look really good. If you're really good at that, the first pass is going to save you time. So it's where do you want to spend the time? Putting it down the first time or correcting it? I feel like I'm going to correct it no matter what. Edit. Smooth and sharpen. Smooth spline. Okay. Then most importantly, secondary surface, light rough. Okay, you can change the width of all this if you want. Like I said, I'm big on the light rough. A lot of people aren't. If I have time, I'll go back at the end to talk about that too. But there you have the rough draft. Now you can get rid of all these, right? So measurement, clear all, and now go through them one by one, which I'll show you on hole 2. But very quickly, you'll see that gets you the basic framework, like I did. Um, it was fairly quick. You can spend more time on it if you like, but your choice. All right, back to hole 2. Okay, so let's wrap this up. So you can see here that it looks a little bit better from the tee box. So let's just go over some fundamentals of splining. Make sure you measure twice and cut once, as they say. Measure things out or draw it out, either way you want to do it. But I would advise strongly against haphazardly just throwing a fairway spline down. You don't want to be sloppy with them. Your work's going to look sloppy. Your course is going to look sloppy. So figure out whichever way you want to do it. If you have another way of doing it, that's fine. But as long as you're careful, measure things out, give yourself perspective, draw it in, trace it in, and then lay down your spline. And then you do have to go over it one by one, smooth them out, and make it look nice. It doesn't have to be perfect, no, because not all fairways are perfect. But the more time you spend on it, the better it's going to look. And if you want your course to pop and be, one of those courses people want to play, that get accepted to TGC tours or accepted by me on Casuals Golf Club, it's got to look and play just so. This looks pretty good. Pretty smooth curves here. Be creative with your shapes. It doesn't have to be curved. You can do kind of squared edges. I think the splining tool is very flexible. I like it. You can see that yellow line and move things out. So space things out, smooth them out, use the sharp and smooth, and make your fairway look really, really tight and nice. Because that is one of the things that people notice the most about it. It's going to, right off the tee shot, it's one of the first things you should be able to see, unless you have a blind shot. But, if they're sloppy, it just looks like very amateurish, okay? So this isn't great. This is, like I said, I'm guessing at what this fairway looked like. But I think this is a cool hole to kind of demonstrate that. So here you can see this fairway presents right from the start. The fairway's on the low area of the course, and the green and the entrance to the green is up on a slope on the north side. So it can enhance the look of your course. It's certainly one of the first things you're going to notice, especially on the first tee. So just be careful with it, okay? If you have questions, let me know. If you have another topic you want me to cover, let me know. But that's all for now. We're going to wrap this up. So thank you so much for joining. Please like and subscribe, and I hope to talk to you very soon.